You know, I loved being a librarian. I loved sitting at the desk and fielding a reference question that came out of left field. I adored the challenge of getting a room full of half-asleep freshmen to care about literature reviews at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. I got a thrill every time I sat with a first-generation or adult student overwhelmed by a big research project, and watching their confidence grow as I showed them how to narrow their topic and sharpen a search query. But more importantly, to realize that, yes, they did have what it takes to learn and think and succeed. And then I started climbing the ladder into management because I wanted to have more power to help more students. I wanted to scale my impact beyond the reference desk in the classroom. So I went back to school to learn how higher ed really ticked, so I could advocate for the library and the students who used it as a place of respite and a tool for growth. And then, one day, I woke up and realized I'd achieved my goal. I was a leader who was making a difference in my organization, my university, and maybe even the wider community. But I wasn't a librarian anymore. And just because the trade-off was worth it doesn't mean I haven't had to grieve it. If any of this sounds familiar to you newer leaders listening, stay tuned, because today I'm going to teach you how to kindly manage this transition. Welcome to the Kind Leadership Challenge, the podcast that empowers leaders to heal their organizations in 10 minutes. I'm Dr. Sarah Clark, founder of the Kind Leadership Guild, where I use my PhD in higher ed leadership and nearly 2 decades of experience in academic libraries to coach a community of educational and library leaders who are working to build a better world without burning out. In our unique and imperfect ways, kind leaders make tough decisions without becoming jerks. We create impactful and burnout-proof systems for our organizations. And we know that once we stop controlling and start collaborating, even the most ambitious vision can become effortless. Kind leadership's pretty simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. So if you're up for a challenge, stick around as I teach you how to create a resilient, thriving legacy that will strengthen your community long after you're gone. As I often do, I'm going to explore how to manage the transition from individual contribution to management through the Kind Leadership Framework. The 3 skills of kind leadership are growing humanely, where we learn how to make decisions that work with our emotions and values; managing effectively, where we make a plan to implement those decisions; and creating collaboratively, where we work with other stakeholders to understand how our decisions will impact them and create a shared vision for building a better world. To grow humanely as a first-time leader, the first thing you need to do is be open to feeling your feelings, especially the messy ones. Because if you don't feel your feelings, they will poison any decision or interaction you have with your team. You may be feeling joy at achieving your new position, and that's great. But are you expressing it in a manner that doesn't hurt those who may be less joyous about your good fortune? You might be feeling anger if there were challenges and surprises in your leadership position that you hadn't been prepared for. You may feel sadness, like I did, about losing the best parts of being an individual contributor. And you may be feeling some guilt or even imposter emotions. Those things are all fine to feel and have important things to teach you. So feel them and process them. Now, once you've done that and kind of quieted the emotions a little bit, you can check in with your values so you can figure out what kind of leader you want to be. To my mind, one of the biggest changes between being an individual contributor and being a leader is that your personal success is no longer your top workplace priority. Your team's success is. And that means you need to be the kind of leader your team needs you to be, rather than the kind of leader you imagined being in your head. And so, if you have a similar core value around leadership, and if you're listening to the Kind Leadership Challenge podcast, you probably do have a similar core value. You can grow humanely by deciding to become the kind of leader that you believe will set your team up for the most success. How to do that? Well, that takes us to the next skill of kind leadership, managing effectively. Managing effectively is all about making and executing a game plan to implement your decision. And to do that, you need to get real about the facts of your organization's current situation and honestly assess the resources you have available or need to get in order to change what needs changing in your sphere of influence. The first chore is gathering information from people and documents, keeping in mind that everyone you talk to will have an agenda, or at least an opinion. But by sifting all those stories together, including yours, and testing them against the unarguable facts of the situation, you'll have a more precise understanding of what kind of leadership style the situation calls for. And to make your plan, you have to get honest about what resources you have and don't have to create the leadership culture you're shooting for. Time is often a limiter on this one, as a leader often needs to be on call for surprises and opportunities. I personally learned this one the hard way, as I briefly tried to take a reference shift or two in order to get to know our students and to keep being a librarian. And because my director at my previous university had managed to work the desk, at least during slower times of the semester. Well, after the second week of my time at my university, and the third time I had to bail on a shift last minute because of a surprise meeting at the administration building, I gave up the reference desk. Acknowledging what your team needs and what is doable with the resources at hand is critical in creating your game plan as a new leader that will enable you to manage effectively. And last but not least, once you've grown humanely and managed effectively, it's time to get out of your head, your calendar, and your spreadsheets and get to know the people who will be most impacted by how you approach your role as leader, your team, your stakeholders, and your broader community. Because the hardest thing about being a leader is that your job has changed for good. Plus, as a new leader for this team, you are either new to your organization, new to your role as leader, or both. Your team probably doesn't understand you. They may not even trust you. But if you can create a culture of psychological safety, then they can tell you what they need, whether it's lots of coaching or hands-off advocacy that gives them room to shine. Then it's time to talk to your boss, your community, and other stakeholders so that you can understand what they need from you as well. Once that's done, it's time to find a balance point between your decisions, your team's needs, and your stakeholders' priorities in order to create a shared vision that gets all of you closer to the better world you desire, even if it does mean you spend less time on the front lines. Believe it or not, a day will come when you realize that you're still teaching, guiding, and coaching. The scale may be different than it used to be, but the rewards are still there. So, here's your challenge for this week. How do you need to recalibrate your goals, your workflow, and your vision to better serve your organization? Walk through the 3 skills of kind leadership and see what jumps out at you. Consider talking to a trusted colleague or mentor, too. They can probably see things you can't. Thanks, as always, for listening to the Kind Leadership Challenge. Before you go, here's a quick way you can spread the word of kind leadership. I'd like you to take a moment to think of one friend or colleague who could most benefit from this week's challenge. Open your podcast app or head on over to kindleadershipchallenge.com/77 and share this episode with them. Add a friendly note as well. Never doubt that day by day you're building a better world, even if you can't see it yet. So until next time, stay kind now. Need a confidential community of like-minded educational leaders who'll support you in your ups and downs? Check out the Kind Leadership Guild. Want a leadership coach who's as close as your DMs? That's also the Kind Leadership Guild. And what about on-demand training that guides you through everyday challenges and the big shifts that will help you build a better world without burning out? You guessed it, the Kind Leadership Guild has you covered there too. To learn more, head to kindleadershipguild.com.